Before I knew what I was doing, I was already moving, running to put myself between them. I didn't think about it, I just moved instinctively. Even with that, my wife got there faster. It was like a movie on fast forward. She got to our son and bashed his hand away, knocking the knife across the room, and then shoved him with her whole body weight so hard that he flew away from the crib and bounced off the wall. I picked up my daughter and held her while my wife screamed us. I could see her shaking, almost convulsing. I can remember the smell of the room, the sound of my daughter screaming and wailing, the look on my son's face as he stood there. Just nothing. Blank. Dead. There was nothing in his eyes. No emotion. Anti-personality disorder. I added that part myself. He looked like an alien to me. I watched my wife take a step toward him. I could have reached out and stomped on her.
Stopped her.
Stopped her. That adds up. That makes more sense. But I didn't. She stepped forward again, very close to him. I could have stopped her again, but I didn't. She waited, looking at him for maybe 3 to 5 seconds without moving, and then she punched him in the face. Now, until this point, you may have been picturing my wife as a typical woman, small, frankly, dainty, delicate. This is not the case. My wife does have a small frame, but dainty and delicate she is not. Never has been since I've known her. Since her early teens, my wife has been a boxer. MMA didn't exist back then, but karate and boxing were big in those days. My wife was a very talented amateur.
He's about to get his ass whooped.
She was about 130 pounds. She carried a lot of muscle, and she knew how to punch. I had 70 pounds on her back then, and I have no doubt that in a real fight between me and her, she could have and would have pounded me flat. Wow.
I know how he likes his women. Huh.
I would have never guessed this woman was a boxer. And probably a dominatrix.
Thought that dominate her son. What?
I mean, that's a little weird. I was thinking she dominated her husband, but okay. Neither of us had ever laid a hand on our son in anger before. For real?
I don't know if I would have been able to hold back.
Maybe that was like part of the issue, you know?
Just slap him around a little bit. Just slap him around.
Just give him a good slap, you know? He lights a cat on fire, you know? I think he deserves a roundhouse kick across the face, you know? Like, maybe not from his mom, because he'd die on contact.
Why does it have to be such a cool kick, like they're doing kung fu?
Well, you can't kick someone in the face without it being a cool kick. If you can get your leg high enough to kick someone in the face, it's automatically a cool kick.
You could, like,
Where was I? But something broke in her that day. I wonder why. And all the years of anger and pain and sorrow and frustration just came pouring out. When she hit him, his head snapped back and blood started pouring from his nose. He hardly reacted. He just looked at her with this shocked expression like he didn't know how to process what had just happened. She waited another second, and then she hit him again. I could have reached out and stopped her. I could have dragged her out of the room, taken her away. It sounds like you couldn't, dude. If you tried to drag her away, she was just gonna beat your ass.
She was on a mission.
Like, I mean, I don't even blame her. I just stood there and watched while she systematically started to pound him to a pulp. Every time he brought his hands to cover one part, she would blast him somewhere else. Body, head, over and under. He started screaming, crying out, yelling for her to stop. It's the most genuine reaction I've ever seen him have to anything in his whole life. But she wasn't stopping. I watched her ramping up, hitting harder, faster, working him like a heavy bag. He tried to swing at her, and she slipped him easily. Could you imagine, like, your mother...
Get beat by a woman?
Your mother just happens to be an insane boxer. That's so inconvenient for this kid.
A fucking course.
I would be terrified if I was in like an actual fight like that, and I took a good swing and they just slipped it and counter hit me. I would instantly be like, "Oh, they box for real. They box for real. I'm running." It's like there's a big difference between dodging a punch and slipping a punch, you know?
What's the difference?
One is like, you know, you like just like react and jump back and dodge a punch. The other is they punch you, maybe you like duck under it or slip to the side and then you counter hit them across the face or something. Slip is like a skillful dodge that sets you up for another attack.
Like a counter attack.
Yeah. You don't necessarily have to attack, but it's just like it's a professionally done dodge, pretty much. Where was I? She tried. His wiener, he slipped it. Sinking down into her training, I stood there watching for a minute. Then I turned my back on them and took my daughter out of the room. I brought my daughter to the kitchen and gave her a bath in the sink. I found that he had cut her a third time on the sole of her foot. All the cuts were superficial. I cleaned her up and held her until she calmed. I put polysporin and band-aids on her cuts in our bedroom. I could hear my son screaming, calling my wife horrible names, telling her he would cut her head off and fuck her corpse. What?
We had the exact same reaction.
What?
Excuse me?
After a while, I didn't hear him saying anything anymore. Didn't even hear him crying out. I assumed that he must have been knocked out, but I could still hear her beating him. Beating him off.
Going.
Wow. Who says that? As just a genuine threat, even if you were like some insane bad guy, right?
And I'm gonna cut your head off and fuck your corpse?
Yeah. What kind of threat is that? Like, first off,
he's a motherfucker is what he is.
He's a self-motherfucker, too. His own mother. That went on for a long time. Long enough for my daughter to drift off to sleep in my arms. I just sat at the kitchen table waiting for her to finish. Finally, she came out and sat down across from me. Her hands were swollen and red. Her face and arms were splattered with blood. Her chest was heaving. We just stared at each other without saying anything. After a while, I asked her, "Is he dead?" She looked back at me and answered, "I fucking hope so."
Oh my gosh.
I nodded. That was all there was to say about that. I understood how she felt perfectly. I felt the same. I didn't know what to do, so we just sat there waiting silently. Eventually, my wife started crying and went to go to the shower. I just stayed where I was, holding our daughter. After a long while, I heard moaning and sobbing coming from our room. It turned out that my son wasn't dead. I went in to see how bad it was, and it was pretty bad. I've never seen a more merciless beating laid onto anyone before or since.
Got his ass.
How many merciless beatings do people witness in their lifetime?
Like, I have not seen one. Personally.
I've yet to see one. Even like a bar fight or something wouldn't count as a merciless
Actually, in the bedroom,
beating.
my penis begs for mercy.
But like, are you merciless?
There is no mercy. I thought that was a pit.
Pretty bad. Anyone before or since? He was laying on the floor, rolling around with blood leaking from his face, lying in a pool of vomit. His nose was squashed flat out across his face. Both his eyes were completely swollen shut and started to blacken already. I could see that a couple of his fingers were bent out at weird angles, and he had pissed his pants.
Get humiliated.
That's how it feels. You piss your own pants instead of pissing in their bed.
That's how it feels. I'm just a huge fan of the sport.
I think he must have been missing teeth, but I couldn't see any on the floor, and I couldn't see inside his mouth. His lips were all puffed up and swollen from talking to my wife about it. Wait, Oh my
You
fucking
can't
god!
fucking read! Read! Read the words on the page!
Okay, where was I? From talking to my wife about it later, I know now that she had systematically beaten every part of his body, focusing heavily on the legs. She told me she kicked him in the groin repeatedly until her legs got tired, and had kept beating his body long enough after he passed out. Going for the legs, I think, is underrated tactic in fighting.
They can't stand.
Well, they can't stand. It's a fight ender, and also, like, it's hard to protect your legs. When my wife came out of the shower, I still didn't know what to do about our son. I didn't know whether to call the police or an ambulance, take him to the hospital myself. I honestly didn't have any idea what to do. After a while, I realized that I simply didn't care what happened to him anymore, and we decided to just let him live or die on his own. There was an in-law suite in the basement. In-law suite, my bad. In the basement that we had never really used, and my wife, my daughter, and I just moved down there. We simply ceded the top floor of our house to my son and locked everything down, separated our lives entirely. There was plenty of food in the upstairs cabinets, enough for a couple weeks or more. He had a washroom and bedrooms to use. We had a washroom in the basement, a small kitchenette, and a separate entrance, so we just stopped going upstairs. We just decided we were done with him. I figured we'd just let his food run out and see what happens. That's insane to me. No way I would have given up my house.
Well, how are you gonna kick him out? I mean, you just beat his ass.
He's
Although
17.
He cut the daughter.
He's
So
17. He cut
I don't
the daughter.
know. I don't know where that would lie legally. I feel like that would have to be like self-defense, right?
Yeah, probably. And I would
Except you keep beating him after he's already knocked out.
I would have tried to get him put in jail. And then,
Again, as you said, it's surprising he's not already in jail.
Yeah. I mean, he just stole someone's steak knife. You can't steal. That's crazy.
Wait, you cut your daughter? That's not really that. Wait, you stole a steak knife?
Wait,
Well, you're going to the slammer.
that steak knife is the Jelanskys across the street.
Get him! Get his ass!
Over the next week, we could hear him moving around upstairs, sometimes. I think he just spent most of his time lying in bed recovering. I went to work, watching on high alert in case he attacked me in the driveway, but he never did. My wife stayed home with our daughter. She was never out of our sight. One night, we heard him going ballistic, smashing things and banging. That's the end of the sentence. Just banging. We didn't respond.
Who?
He never tried to get
You
downstairs.
better check on your wife, make sure she still has her head.
Oh my god! He never tried to get near us, though. I think he was afraid that if he got near us again, my wife might finish the job on him. After 3 weeks down in the basement, we hadn't heard anything from up above for a few days, and I ventured upstairs to the main floor of the house. The place was demolished, and there was no sight of my son. He was gone. It took months to repair the damage he had done and get to the main floor back to normal again. There was food and shit smeared all over the walls. Do you think he's talking just like shit, like, oh, there was stuff in general, or like literal shit?
Oh, no, literal shit, probably.
He's probably talking literal shit, which is crazy. Big holes in the drywall. He had ripped the place apart. He tore up the linoleum. It's a weird word. In a corner of the kitchen and emptied an entire foam fire extinguisher into the living room. I feel thankful that he didn't burn the house down with us in it.
Well, yeah, how's he gonna do that? He had a fire extinguisher.
What do you mean? The kid had the fire extinguisher.
Yeah, he was spraying it around. He wasn't gonna burn the place down. He was taking the fire out.
He probably lit it on fire and was like, I'm gonna die in here too. Screw this. And just, extinguished it. I'm honestly not sure why he didn't. The kid wasn't shy about lighting things on fire. After that, I lived in fear every day that he would come back, that he would ambush us out of the blue and try to kill us. We moved house about 3 years later and finally stopped being afraid that he would show up again. As now, He had no idea where we were. I finally felt safe from him. I feel like I've been reading for an hour, man. It's probably the most I've read in a while.
You getting your reading
Oh,
hours?
I'm near
You
the
get your
end.
summer reading in?
All this happened a long time ago. My son was born in the spring of 1971. My daughter was born in 88. I'm an old man now. I'll be 70 this year, and my wife passed away from cancer in 2016. My daughter is 31 now. I moved in with her and her husband after my wife passed. I got 2 granddaughters, and they're the joy of my life. I see a therapist a couple times a month to talk about all this. I don't know where my son is. The last time I saw him was when he was lying on the floor of our bedroom, bleeding and smashed. I haven't heard from him since he left. More than 30 years now. I don't want to. I carry a lot of guilt from that time, and a lot of conflicted emotions.
You pronounced it weird.
Conflicted emotions.
You were like, conflicted?
I didn't beat him myself, but I allowed him to be beaten, and thought he deserved it. I was happy it happened. I didn't try to kill him, but I would have been happy if he died. I will say that I do hope he was able to overcome his demons and go to live a normal life somewhere.
Doubt it. I doubt it.
I don't
He
think he
probably
did.
went to prison.
Probably. If he wasn't able to do that, if he stayed the way he was, then I truly do hope someone out there killed him. When I knew him, he was a rabid dog, and whichever way it went, I just hope he isn't still out there hurting anyone else. The end.
Some people are just broke. Like, they just born, like, just messed up in the head. There's nothing you can do.
Some people just want to watch the world burn.
I mean, like, from the moment, like, even as a baby,
Yeah.
they were...
What do you do as the therapist, though? Because, like, if I'm the therapist, I'd be like,
It's not your fault, dude.
I think you're right, man.
You're
like,
right, dude. I feel like maybe that's what you gotta do, is convince him that
no need
it
to
wasn't
feel
his
guilt.
fault. There was nothing... I don't think there was probably nothing that he could have done to fix him.
Yeah. I mean, he's probably... The dude's probably got PTSD now.
The son's got PTSD from that whooping.
I think PTSD is the least of the son's worries. That's his most minor
Yeah, his biggest
disorder.
worry is that he got beat by a girl.
That would suck. Not just a girl, his mom.
Way to feel emasculated, you know?
You know what, though? It sounds like that woman would have beat the hell out of me, too.
I'd let her. What?
You'll know if she was hot.
On a boxer?
She might have been like a Marissa from Street Fighter. What is it, Street Fighter 6? Yeah. Marissa.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that was a girl.
Mommy Marissa. Terrifying character.
Yeah, I bet their sympathy probably ran out, especially the mothers. You could tell it ran out after the daughter was normal, because it was like,
Yeah.
okay, so it's not us.
It's like, okay, we're
It was
good
not because of
parents.
something we did,
We're
because our
good
daughter's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, it probably didn't help that, like, the mom would just, like, tell him to leave whenever he went in the same room as him.
But
And
that's
then,
already too late.
I know, but I'm saying, like, at that point, the mom was constantly probably just wanting to beat him up and was like, you better leave or else I'm gonna lose my shit.
I'm gonna beat your ass.
And then, you know, he was just like, hey, let me drop the biggest freaking straw ever to break your back, you know? Let me just do the worst thing possible.
One more straw will break the back. Well, I'm gonna drop a bus on it.
That's pretty much what happened.